different. Hi, everyone. Welcome back and thank you guys. So this session is going to be a little different. I know you guys were expecting Dr. Weir, but unfortunately he had an emergency. So instead of having Dr. Mayer speak, we are going to have a conversation on advocacy. And so for this, we want you guys participation. You are able to unmute, turn your cameras on, and speak with us as we talk for the next 45 minutes about about advocacy and what are some ways we could better it, what things we could do when advocating in the different places we are. So first, let's start off by saying, where are we all at? Drop that in the chat. I'm in New York. Carla?
I'm in Florida. I'm in Orlando, Florida area.
Orlando, Florida.
Miss Pat? She might be muted. Anybody else?
I'm in Chicago.
You in Chicago?
Yeah.
Right now.
Oh, for right now? I'm about to say, why are you not in Cali?
I'll rep Cali today.
Okay, Renee. Who else? Who else do we have? Where else do we have? We have Chicago, Cali, Florida, New York. But I'm a Jersey girl.
Out here in Florida.
I'm only in New York because my fiance loves New York, but he don't know we're moving back to New Jersey. He know, but he don't know. No. He think I'm gonna love New York after 2 years. No.
So we're gonna start off. You can put in the chat where you're from. We would love to know where you're from. But we're gonna start off with a conversation on why is advocacy important for sickle cell. And I will kind of talk a little bit about my advocacy journey, how I started. I'm Carla Lewis, founder of Kids Conquering Sickle Cell Disease Foundation. As many of you may know, my journey actually started because I'm a mom and my son was born with sickle cell disease, and I saw a gap in services, a gap in those health professionals even getting information to move more far along as far as getting involved as far as education and also patient involvement. We know we as parents, we are partnering care. So I also saw a need for parents to get together and pretty much support each other. So my journey actually started as started a support group and kind of built on from that and saw that the needs were so great within the community. And we focused on education, advocacy, and awareness. And just knowing that not at the time that my son was born in 2002, there was little conversation that people would come to me when I even have support or go out in the community, they would whisper, oh, I have the trait. And I realized that there was some still kind of, stigma with sickle cell and others not wanting to talk about it. So there was definitely a need and importance to have more conversation. So one of the things that I also learned was that we didn't have too much legislative laws in order to help funding different things in regards to sickle cell. And we have a statistic that says in America, there's about 100 patients living with sickle cell. That actually a number has been there for years, ever since my son was born. And I know, we know it's much more than that. So we know that data is important when it comes on to each state getting funding, and definitely with support, and also to legislative support. They look at numbers. Numbers make a difference. So definitely, definitely having that data and recording is so important. And we know that in certain states that were able to pass legislative laws, how it have been useful and how they be able to create the databases in order to collect information. And we also know that because of the patient voice, newborn screening, right, for genetic disorders such as sickle cell disease in the United States became such a big accomplishment. And that is actually how my son got diagnosed, from his newborn screening. Back way back when, they did not have that capability. And then, people didn't know that their child have sickle cell or any other genetic disorders, which are still, some still struggling to get on the newborn screening. So we do know that sickle cell was one of the important diagnoses that needed to be definitely acknowledged and a part of that newborn screening. So that made a difference. So the advocacy part that came into play was definitely the patient voice, learning that from different, avenues. And I'll have Pat talk about a little bit, because she's actually knows from way back when the NAACP came in and started to advocate and, did testing, right? For sickle cell, advocated for testing for sickle cell. That was so important. So that's a little bit my journey and how I became an active advocate and just wanting more for my community and showing up and speaking up. The consortium talks a lot about that. The Sickle Cell Community Consortium is where I'm referring to. If you don't know, they're an organization with a community-based organizations coming together, having a unified voice for the community. And they also have educational sessions and a lot of activities going on in order to help empower us. So that's a little bit about me. I'll let DeMitrious tell you a little bit about his journey into advocacy and why he decided and thought it was important to get involved in advocacy.
Absolutely. So I got into advocacy 2018. It's severely new. I got into advocacy right after I got my pride prism surgery, and Miss Carla was actually the one that got me into advocacy. She came to me at the hospital and was like, "Hey, I have a foundation, Kids Conquering Sickle Cell. I would love for you to meet my son, Shamar. We have this event here." And then I came out to it, and from there, it was just, I realized that's exactly what I wanted to do. Then she took me to the consortium, the first consortium Warriors Convention. And from there, I started seeing people that I seen on social media and started connecting with the Warriors, and realized that I was introduced to my purpose. I always thought my purpose was to make music and, do what I thought I wanted to do. But when I realized that sickle cell is the most special thing in my life, even though it causes so much pain and a lot of trauma in my life, it's still special to me and I love it. So when Carla took me and I seen this convention full of warriors that I'd never seen in my life, being from Des Moines, Iowa, I always thought I was the only person with sickle cell my whole life. So when I moved out here to Orlando, Florida, and seen that there was more stuff going on as far as a community, I realized that my voice was going to be very effective in this community, just with my passion alone and how much that I love sickle cell. So when we teamed up and we got together, it's just like everything that we do is in the name of sickle cell. Everything that we do is to educate and bring more awareness to this illness, to have a better future and a better life. Just looking back from when we started, the information and the education has grown so much because we've done so much work, and it's special to see how many people, as far as caregivers and as far as people with sickle cell, push this very special topic, a very rare topic that's never really talked about. When you talk about rare disease, the first thing you hear is cancer. So it's like sickle cell, we need so many more voices to echo louder through this nation. And when I realized that it was a shortage of men, I was going to these conferences and seeing a lot of women advocating for sickle cell. So I never heard from a real, like a man's perspective. I felt like, man, listen, I gotta be the voice for my men. I gotta be that. I gotta be a example for men to know that they can live well with this illness, that they can triumph, that they can do their best, and whatever dreams and aspirations that they have in life that they want to be, that they can fulfill those dreams even with sickle cell. So that's what I got into advocacy for. And yeah, it's a blessing. I see the progression, and I'm here for it.
Oh, that's awesome. So I have always advocated for myself. My aunt taught me that from the time we found out I had sickle cell at the age of 5. As Carla had said before, I want to say 1995. When was it 1995 or like 2000? Around that time, all the states in the United States had the newborn screening, and sickle cell was on it. I was born in 85, and so I had to find out the hard way, which there are still warriors that are like 40 years old are just now finding out that it wasn't growing pains, it wasn't their imagination, that they actually have sickle cell. So once we found out I had sickle cell, my aunt taught me how to advocate for myself. She never let the doctors speak to them. The doctors always had to speak to me. I got to ask questions. So when I got to college and I started having worse crisis attacks and was in the emergency room with this one sickle cell girl, because she had asked me, she's like, "You got sickle cell?" And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "I do too." The way the doctors and nurses treated her against the way they treated me was totally different. And I had never experienced it at that time because I was still like 18. They treated her so horribly. And then I spoke up to her. I was like, "You're a doctor. Like, your first thing to do is to do no harm. You shouldn't be doing that. Take care of her. That is, what if this was your mother, your sister, your brother, or whatever? You're not supposed to do any harm." And so they did start treating her better after that. She had said, "Thanks." She said, "Oh, I've never thought you could speak up." I was like, "Yeah, you shouldn't allow them to do it." So then I started going to meetings. I found out about the Therapeutics Conference back in 2014.
Yeah.
That was the first sickle cell conference I went to. And that changed everything for me. Because at that time, I didn't think any pharma companies cared, that they weren't doing any therapies. I'm like, this is just considered a Black disease unless you're in another country. So they don't really care. They're not doing anything. And then I went to the pharma company and I seen all these pharma and therapeutics companies coming up with different therapies and things for sickle cell. And so that was what got me on it. Like, you know what, this information needs to be shared. And from that, I created SCD Forum, which is an online platform where I give out give out information. And we do prizes and games and stuff too, but I give out information and let the people make their own judgment and decisions on it. As long as you are informed, you are able to make decisions. And that's one of the most important things why I think advocating is important. As long as you have that information, you're informed, you're able to make the right decision for you. So that's how my advocacy came about.
Thank you so much, Dominique. We just finished a great session with Pat Corelli, nurse extraordinaire in the community, which she spoke about disparities. And we know that disparities, of course, still exist, and with biases also, playing a part in what a lot of patients face in the community. Can you tell us, we want to hear from the audience, can someone tell us, how have their state actually are moving towards helping our sickle cell community in, fighting the disparities? And, Pat did a talk on overcoming disparities, right? The invisible with the invisible disease. How can we move even further collaboratively? Or if your state doing anything in particular, are there legislative, legislative acts coming in place? I know we talk about the emergency room care a lot for, having barriers in each state, and I'll let Dominique speak to that because I know she is an excellent, we spoke about emergency room care before, and there's an excellent facility that's doing it right. So I like to acknowledge those things. So anyone want to either put their hand up?
Yeah, Renee has her hands up. Renee,
Okay.
You can unmute.
You can unmute, Renee.
I think first and foremost, you need to identify your CBO and your county or your state. And second of all, I think part of my advocacy is connecting people, resources. So if you have to go to the hospital, doctor, whatever it is, you need that extra support. So I would say that I just finished a mentorship program with Cayenne Wellness. And I think it's extremely necessary. And I think we just touched on this at the last meeting with the consortium, pairing up mentors, mentors and mentees, because that support, like DeMitrious said earlier, I didn't even know anybody had sickle cell in my family or in all of California, if you will. I grew up in a small town in Sacramento, and I was a minority because it was a whole bunch of not us where I grew up. And it was very interesting to know that, fast forward, 10 years later, I met Pat at USC. And it's important to have somebody in your corner that looks like you, that has the passion. And dare I say, even if they don't look like you, at least have the passion to support you in your journey, because this is a very isolating disease. And, it comes with a lot of mental and psychological ramifications of having a chronic illness. So that would be my one thing that I would advocate for, is getting the support through a peer mentor or a professional mentor, but have somebody in your corner that you can call. That's why we love our CHWs.
Yes, they do great work.
So I'm gonna pop in, Carla,
Sure.
in the middle of all this. I tell everybody I got tricked into sickle cell. Okay. My walk with sickle cell was not a planned walk. It was a walk where I decided to volunteer someplace that housed people that look like me, and I wanted to give service to people that look like me. And when I researched it, guess what came up? Sickle cell disease.
Wow.
And so I volunteered at a sickle cell camp for children living with sickle cell disease. And that was life-changing for me, because I had no idea, I was in the mental health field at the time. I had no idea that sickle cell would live in the same house as I lived in, and I can just say that sickle cell has made me a better person. It has made me aware, eyes wide open on what happens, not just to people with sickle cell disease, but to people of color as they embark upon their journey with medical systems and stuff. And so I would say, I guess probably what I would say is be true to you, and what you want for your life with sickle cell disease is the best possible. You got the disease, you're going to have some suffering, but you don't want to suffer every day with sickle cell disease. And so that's the thing that I tell patients. How can we make it possible for you to have the best possible life with sickle cell disease? What is it that's really, really important to you? And in advocating, what is really important to that person that you're advocating for? Sometimes we want to advocate for things that don't line up with the other person needs or wants. And sometimes we have to say, because we're advocates, we also have to be informers. And so some things that people want when you're advocating for them is not what they should get, And so just to be an educator, an advocator, a carer, a person who, if you're going to show up at the job, do the best possible job you can for people with sickle cell disease. And because it has value, and use community-based organizations. They are so important, and community health workers, and your chaplains. I use the chaplains all the time. And then a trip to your legislator. You can do it locally, you can do it nationally, but make your voice heard, because so often people with sickle cell disease forget they have a voice. And you do have a voice. You matter. And people figure, why should I fight for you if you won't fight for yourself?
Mm-hmm.
So just sometimes it's scary, sometimes it's isolating, but it's worth it. I actually, the only reason that I really got a bigger voice in sickle cell is that I looked at the people around me with sickle cell and they didn't have a voice. And that was way back in the 70s. And I said, we have to make it possible for people with sickle cell disease to be heard. And I started
Mhm.
support groups. Dr. Frimpong was my biggest supporter on starting those support
Oh,
groups.
wow.
And he sent me a round trip ticket to come and talk to the people in New Orleans about it. And that was the beginning of my trek with sickle cell disease and the beginning of my understanding that it is so important to have a voice. And sometimes when your voice can't be heard, you need to have another voice that has more power than your voice at that point. And that's why we are who we are. And nurses are amazing at doing that, because we know the culture of nursing, and we also know that nurses are gatekeepers for the healthcare system. And so if they don't like you, nobody ain't gonna like you. Okay. So the way you show up really makes a difference. And the importance of advocating and being knowledgeable about what you're advocating about is so very, very important because it gives you credibility. And so I say to you guys, as you go out and advocate, not everybody is designed to be an advocate. And so find out who is that person who can advocate and advocate successfully, and their voice can be heard for you. And when you run into those walls where your voice can no longer be heard, don't wait until the last minute, until everything is just falling down to try and have that person run in and shore it up, but have them present so that they're there for you and that they can support you as you do what you do, the magic you do to make life with sickle cell disease better. So that's just my thought on that.
Thank you so much, Pat. One of the points that you made was, it's okay to go to your faith-based community. It's okay to, also go to your legislative's office. As you may know that even with sickle cell and even rare disease, stronger together and showing up on the legislative days is important in order to, when we see organized groups doing that, especially to help us or have a collaborative voice is so important. The Every Life Foundation, I have to mention them. They're a wonderful foundation for, recognizing the rare disease community and bringing us together. They have Rare Disease Day. I think my first time attending was way back in 2000, probably was 16 or before. And then just bringing back that information. So we know that they have done a wonderful job just bringing in all the rare disease space disorders in order for us to, attend meetings and be a stronger voice together, talking to our legislators. And then locally, we can do the same. They actually contribute one day to educating. I can tell you that I was literally, when I thought of joining going to Rare Disease Day, I had no clue what to expect. I had to go look up who my legislator was in my state. I had to really, write down the information, but I was willing to learn, and that I had to be open to learn because I knew the importance. That I did know your vote matters. Why it's going to matter? Because it's going to help the community and make an impact some way. So just even being open to just learn was actually important for me. And I got over the fear, just having others to talk, and others were the same boat as me, meeting with other rare disease. They was there. Some people were there for the very first time, learning about legislative acts and learning how to do your elevator speech. Those things, those little things that matter, because you only have a little bit of time to talk to your, legislative representative, and you want to make an impact, just sharing your story and sharing what's impacting community, and then your ask what you want. So learning those things and walking out of fear, I would say, was very important. Also, when it came on to, and back then I have to say, we didn't have a name for this advocacy. That wasn't, we just came out and was showing up, speaking up, wanting to learn, wanting to also be the voice for our voice to be heard, and also sharing our story. I will say it came at a tough time for me, because I was at a time when my son was not experiencing too many, I want to say, hospitalizations, because of crisis. We had hospitalizations because of other things in the past, but then sickle cell had gotten so aggressive that my child was a hospital homebound student. So I had to change, you know, my work life, everything in order to accommodate him when it was his elementary school, his last year of elementary school going on to middle school. And that kind of actually gave me the freedom to even go out to meetings. When he asked me, you know, I don't want to be home, you know, I want to be at school with my peers. And I explained to him that you're going to go back each semester. We're going to see how you do, and we're going to go back. In that time, I said, I'm going to use my time in order to bring him with me so he can see the community as we learn together about sickle cell, more about sickle cell treatments, and getting connected, because that is another thing that we all want in the community. We want to be connected to people that understand us, because we know even at times our own family members don't even understand the walk that we walk, seeing our warriors in and out the hospital and what warriors go through. So definitely, Pat, I will definitely say that's an important key that you mentioned. You know, connection to our legislative community is important, and also our faith-based community, because we know that coming together brings about change. So it's showing up, speaking up, going out. I remember going to my first, it was a round table we had in our community. I didn't know what to expect, but I showed up. I was, you know, quiet, observant, and got information. And when they was, you know, had people go to the mic and talk, you know, I wanted to talk, but they had selected people, but I knew now what to expect. I was learning, being open to learn. So definitely it's a journey for all of us. And I have to say, not everyone is cut out to be a speaker. I know I hated speaking, but I learned to just bring down my guard of fear and then speaking from my heart. And that's pretty much what had led my speaking ability to rise in a different way. So even if you don't like speaking, when you're speaking with compassion, you start to navigate a little bit differently. And so I definitely would say, Pat, thank you for mentioning that. And Dominique, we spoke about, you know, emergency room care and hospital care and advocacy and changes, right, that we need to see across the board nationally. Even as advocates, we talk about this all the time. We see different steps in other states being taken, legislative laws coming into play. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience? Because I know I tapped into talking to you about emergency care in your state and the facilities you're going to.
Yeah, so at my hospital, I'm originally from New Jersey. So at my hospital, a lot of the warriors started realizing, I realized that that we were waiting in the ER, the triage section, for like 8 hours or more just to get in the back. And so I begged my sickle cell nurse coordinator to have a support group, because I was already seeing a mental health professional, and 2, I needed to find other warriors my age that I could talk to, because my friends and family could sympathize, but they really can't truly understand. Only another warrior can truly understand certain things. So I begged for a support group. And the first meeting we had, we were discussing, why was it taking so long for us to get seen? Especially knowing that a crisis attack could do serious damage to our body. We could be having acute chest syndrome, and it takes them anywhere between 8 to 10 hours to get in the back and to get medicine. And that if some of us didn't even need to stay, sometimes we just needed a couple of doses of medicine, IV medicine, and we could go home. But by the time we got there, our pain medicine had worn off. We sitting there, the pain came back, it had doubled, and it's just worse. And now we have to stay in the hospital. So we said that the head of the ER needed to hear this. So our next meeting was with the head of the ER, the head of the hematology department, and we explained to them everything. So it took them about 3 to 6 months to come back with a plan that will work for sickle cell patients, so we wouldn't be sitting in the ER for 6 to 10 hours. So the plan was called the 30-30-30 plan. And it's actually, if I'm not mistaken, it's NHBLI guidelines for treating sickle cell patients. So it's the 30-30-30 rule. When you first get in the ER and you get triage, you're triaged as if you're a heart attack patient. And then once you get into the back, within the first 30 minutes, the doctor comes and see you, puts your order in, and you get your first dose of pain medicine. 30 minutes later, they come back, check on you again. If you're not doing good, they give you another dose of pain medicine. And then 30 minutes later, they come back again and check on you. Now, the 30 minutes, those times could be adjusted. So it doesn't necessarily have to be every 30 minutes you're getting pain medicine. They could come back in 30 minutes and you're like, no, I'm letting the pain medicine work. Give me an hour. And then they'll come back. And then if you need more pain medicine, they give it to you. But when you ask for the third dose of pain medicine, you're going to be admitted. So the third time they come and check on you at the 30, you'll be admitted. They'll ask you, so how are you feeling? Would you like to go home? Do you think you need to be admitted? And sometimes it goes based on your labs, but then you are admitted and the hospitalist comes down to see you. This has cut down on warriors being in the hospital, sitting in a triage area for 6 to 10 hours. It's probably saved a lot of lives. It has saved a lot of money because sometimes warriors, we don't need to be hospitalized. We just need a couple of doses of pain medicine because we're not at a level where we need to, but our pain medicine at home isn't working. And so we just need a couple of doses. So we have implemented that at my hospital and it has been going great. Now it's like maybe an hour or two wait before you get to the back. And that depends on how busy it is. But that is something we work very hard for. And I sit on the medical advisory board for sickle cell at my hospital. We work very hard to make sure that is implemented for the sickle cell patients because we matter. Like you care about the cancer patients, you care about, we matter also. That's one thing I always tell them, that we matter also. And all we want is, we just want to be treated fairly. We don't want your preconceived notions about our health. We don't care. We also implemented this sensitivity training. And this was one of the things I asked them to put in. The sensitivity training is, you get the new ER doctors and nurses and everything around a certain time. So normally during the summertime, like in August, they have a cookout. All the ER doctors come. We have a sickle cell warrior that is not sick and in the hospital. They're fine. Come and speak to them about sickle cell. It changes everything. That little meeting that they have and the sickle cell warrior speaks, it changes everything. It changes their preconceived notions. I have doctors come and apologize to me and apologize to other patients for how they treated them before, after these meetings. And sometimes I think because of what they teach them in medical school, and then what some of the other doctors tell them as they're going, they form their own ideas and think sickle cell warriors are one difficult, we're drug seekers, we're this and that. And it's not true. They just need to see and speak to a sickle cell warrior that is not sick. And like, look, I just want you to treat me as if I was your mother, brother, sister, uncle, whoever. Just treat me with respect. Just first do no harm. That's all I want you to do. And it makes a world of difference. It has made a lot of difference. Now, granted, you just still have some of them doctors that you're like, ain't no helping them at all. But for the majority of the ER doctors, it has changed the way the patients are treated. We're no longer sitting there waiting, and we no longer also have to hear, oh, they're just here, they're just drug seeking. And it makes a difference. Then it makes you want to go to the hospital when you're sick, instead of just sitting there waiting. It makes you want to go to the hospital when you're sick to get taken care of. So it's brought about a lot of change.
That's amazing.
Thank you, Dominique, for mentioning that. One of the things you mentioned, I'm gonna let DeMitrious pop in because I know he has something to say on this. One of the things that you mentioned real quick that I want to highlight and bring a point to, you mentioned because of the things that they put in place, and Pat even spoke on this in disparities, patients fearing to get care. And patients actually, we already know the community, right, that we live in. And if you're not getting the care that you leave, that PTSD that she spoke about, feeling that fear and Now, you're sick enough to really feel that you need to be in the hospital, but you fear going because of the negative treatment or the biases you may feel, or them not believing you, which makes you not trust, right? The care that you don't know what to expect. Is it a good day that somebody might take care of you? Or are you going to get the worst care? You're already feeling bad at home. You know pain meds ain't working, but you rather just bear this out until the very end, until hope and cross your fingers that something works out magically different. We're living in different times. And one thing that you said, Dominique, which really made sense, is that because they put the system in place, it made a difference in the care, and it made a difference in patients actually seeking care when they most need it. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm going to let you chime in on this, DeMitrious, because, we're in Orlando, and, we know a lot of sickle cell warriors that have different experiences, and we really don't have anything like that. But
that's what
I
I was
want you
about
to
to say.
speak.
I was about to say that's amazing that you are on the medical advisory board at your hospital. How can I get on? How can I do something like that? Like, how can I be on the medical advisory board, and how can we implement different care? And it's just little stuff like that, just like small notation.
So
It's
what
called
I did
ask.
was
She doesn't seem, it would have been
asked.
fun if she wore the blow.
So what I did was I went to the head of the hematology, because my hospital has a hematology oncology center. I went to the head of the hematology department, and I explained to them, like, you got a cancer medical advisory board. Sickle cell is important. Also, you have a I'm sorry, what's that other one? It's another blood disorder. I'm drawing a blank, but it's hemophilia.
Hemophilia.
You have the hemophilia advisory board. You have over, and at my hospital, it's over like 1,000 patients for sickle cell. You have over 1,000 patients with sickle cell here that were adults. It's not even counting pediatric, that are adults. And then it's plus more that the ER takes care of. You should have a medical advisory board for sickle cell as well. I say just go ahead and ask. The worst they could say is no. The other thing they could do is say, yes, it's going to take time. But the other thing you also need to realize, if you're going to start this, you need to see it through also.
That's right.
You also need to make sure that you have not just you showing up to the medical advisory boards, but fellow CBOs, community-based organizations need to be there. You need caregivers need to show up to those meetings. You need patients to show up to those meetings. And once you get that going, you're able to make changes and ask the head of the ER departments to attend the meetings, the attendees to attend the meetings. And from there, that's when you go about making a change, because there is a national guideline for how sickle cell patients are to be treated. They just don't follow them.
Yes.
And the way you go about it is, first, you start with the head of the hematology department. And I was just lucky. The head of my hematology department she loves her job. Her father loved his job. And even now the new head of the hematology they love their job. They love their patients, and they're very passionate about sickle cell. And so first thing to do is go and speak with the head of the hematology department.
Great. Thank you for sharing that.
Nurse coordinator also, a nurse coordinator is another person you could go and speak with as well.
Yes. And each hospital, these three definitely systems of hospital have a patient advisory board. So the hospitals have all created a patient advisory board. Once you go to that hospital, that's the hospital that you would want to get connected to go on that advisory board. I did it when my son was at Newmore's, was on that advisory board for years. It's a great experience. Definitely the patient advisory board is where you start, and that they don't pretty much, you don't go to a hospital saying you want to join it if that's not where your care is being received at. They want you to be a partner in care, so you can tell them your feedback. You can also be involved. And that in the meetings, they even had our advisory board in the hiring process when new doctors came aboard. So just know you do have a voice to changes once you join advisory boards. And thank you for sharing that so much, Dominique, because that was real helpful information. I see in the chat, encourage your family and friends to take classes and join support groups. They will get better at understanding sickle cell and how to advocate for you.
Yeah, we also have questions too.
You can read the questions, Dominique.
So one of the questions is, how do you influence the patients in this community who don't advocate for themselves to start advocating? I think that is a very, very good question.
That is a good question. Do you want to answer that, Dominique?
I would say that if you want to encourage, and I've done mentoring, I've mentored younger sickle cell warriors who are just like, they don't want people to know they have sickle cell. They just want to go about the day. When it does come up, take care of it and let it be. I would say this. I say this to them. I say what it sounds to me is like you're ashamed to have sickle cell, and you shouldn't. Don't allow society's negative connotation of what sickle cell is deter you from your purpose in life. You have sickle cell. Sickle cell does not have you. You could do and be whatever you want to be. And the first part about living in your purpose is advocating for yourself. Your parents are not always going to be there to advocate for you. Your friends are not always going to be there to advocate for you. God forbid, if you're sick and you're by yourself, you need to be able to speak up and tell the doctors, well, no, I don't want you to do that. You can't do this because of X, Y, and Z, and feel comfortable enough to do it. And honestly, a lot of the times, and there's no shade to parents or anything, I was raised a little differently. My aunt, from the time we found out I had sickle cell, my aunt made sure the doctors never talked to her. They always talked to me. And the first day was like, well, she's a young girl, she don't understand. Well, say it to her in a way that she understands. So I was always able to advocate for myself. When I didn't want certain things, I let them know from the time I was 5. Sometimes parents take their kids to the doctors and don't teach them how to start advocating for themselves. Because, once you hit 18, them doctors ain't talking to you no more. They talking to their kids. And then the kids don't know how to make doctor's appointments. They don't know what to say to the doctors. They don't know questions to ask. And that's difficult. And it's hard. So the first thing they have to do is they have to speak up for themselves. Try advocating with your parents first. Sometimes that's the hardest one to do, advocating with your parents. And then just speak your mind. If you don't think that this is the correct treatment and you don't like that doctor in the ER, ask for another doctor. You have that right. That doctor does not have to see you. If that doctor makes you uncomfortable, or that nurse makes you uncomfortable, or you don't like how they're treating you, or you think there's some bias against you because of sickle cell, ask for another nurse, ask for another doctor. And that's how you start advocating for yourself. And once you do that first time you advocate for yourself, it's like this whole, you become powerful. You're like, oh, snap. I just got a new doctor just by accident. And it brings about a change that makes you realize you are in charge of your health. And you take charge of your health and advocate for yourself.
Thank you, Dominique. We have any other questions?
Yes, we do, but Ms. Pack got her hand raised.
Okay.
So I'm gonna hop in on that. I think advocacy is partnership. I think it's so important for you to realize where you are at that given moment. Identifying if you don't feel comfortable advocating for yourself, and to know that you already have put in place a backup for who can advocate for you, because there are times when you just cannot. When people come in with sickle cell, they can't even speak, and so it's important to understand that advocacy is a major partnership that you engage in, that you identify somebody who is in a line with what you believe to be your reality and what you believe to be your needs, and that you not go, in times where you're not able to really be who you really are and show up trying to advocate for yourself, but you have that resource already designated at your advocate to your folks the doctors can talk to and nurses can talk to. But I just think it's so important for us to realize we tell people to advocate, but everybody with sickle cell disease is not at the same level. There are people who have had strokes. There are people who are just angry. There are folks who don't know how to show up. And so that's not the person you want advocating for themselves. You want them to have a person who's there, who can calm them down, who can help them to get across what really is going on with them and can help them to speak in a way that what their voice can be heard, and so I think that advocacy is more than just being there and speaking out. It's understanding, it's sizing up that person who walks in the room and saying, this is the way I need to speak with this person in order for them to get it. Because yeah, we do have guidelines, but I always say guidelines are not mandates. The doctors will tell you they don't care what those guidelines say. This is what they believe to be true, and they're practicing on their license, not that guidelines license. And so I think that we really need to equip people to make good choices about who will be their advocate, who will show up for them, and how they will show up in a way that that person gets what they absolutely need. I do believe that when you're well, and when you don't have things that are slapping you in the face right then, like a painful event, yes, you can advocate for yourself. But when you're in situations where you need an army behind you, you should not be advocating for yourself. You need to call in the powers that be, to stand up and ensure that people hear what you're saying. And then to DeMitrious's thing, sometimes we have to make hospitals aware that they have deficits. They have a hemophilia group because somebody with hemophilia said, we need to be able to talk to folks. People with sickle cell in the past did not say those kind of things. We just went along with what was going on, and so we have to have a voice enough. Send a formal letter saying, I've looked at your organization. It looks like you don't have a sickle cell advocacy, have anybody on a committee with sickle cell. I'd like to volunteer. It's making your presence known that really makes the difference. And then to the legislator thing, I would say to you guys that, yeah, we show up for all these legislative things, but visit your person by yourself and let them know who you are, because then when they think about sickle cell, they got a face attached to it.
Exactly.
And it's so important for you to lead that movement. Tell your other folks with sickle cell, drop in, talk to their legislators. Say, you know what, I've noticed that you guys don't do anything for sickle cell. And I live in this community and I vote for you. And so I have expectations for what you should be providing for people with sickle cell. And I think we have not, because we ask not a lot of times. So we just need to be in your face with, this is what's going on in the sickle cell community. And you know what, we will shout you out if you're not taking care of what you ought to be doing for us too. If you take care for other people, you take care of it for us as well. And so that's just how I feel. I feel like a closed mouth don't get fed. Okay, so just show up as your best you to make a difference for sickle cell disease. Remember that you're not just showing up for you, you're showing up for the whole community. And who you are and what you do and what you say and how you do it makes an impact on that whole community that you're servicing. And so I think my aunts are waiting for me, so I'm not going to stay on and keep talking, but I just want you guys to know, DeMitrious, I love you. I want you guys to know that you have power. You have a voice now. You are in places that sickle cell was never in before. take advantage of it. We don't know how long it's
Yes.
going to be for,
Yes.
and so show up and show out every opportunity you have.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, Pat. And I appreciate you jumping in during
Yeah,
this
and
What
family
she
time that
said,
you have.
what she
She's
said is
traveling.
really true too, because when I'm sick in the hospital, like I can't advocate for myself, but when I'm
Nope.
well, I'm a great advocate. But when I'm in a real crisis, I can't even talk. Like, so yeah, you have to have a whole army with you.
yeah.
And that's true. Same thing I
I
was
like you
for my
guys say,
best friend
get
was
your
sick.
posse, get your
Yeah,
posse.
absolutely. It's the same thing I am for my soldiers out here, that when they go into the hospital, I'm that one that shows up for them and I'm their voice. And they know, because they can't advocate for themselves at that time. But when they're well, they can advocate. But when we're
Definitely,
in a crisis,
definitely,
it's a hard thing.
So
definitely.
we do have
I love that question, because it just really brings light. And how do you, and you got so many different perspectives on how do you just bring light to those that maybe not be strong enough. And I think we all go through a period of time that we know our strengths and weaknesses, right? If we don't know them, we learn them. Know our strengths and weaknesses, whether it's during the time when our loved one is sick, or during the time that when we ourselves are not feeling well and have to make step. The worst thing that I think we all have been through this is feeling sick and having to advocate for yourself. Just know that there's other people and ways that we can all come together to advocate. Right now, we have the Sickle Cell Medical Advocacy Group in the community for the warriors that want to understand better how to advocate for themselves. So that's another resource that I wanted to mention for that person that maybe doesn't have the strength or may not feel that advocacy. And there's advocacy in different ways. There's advocacy when you are for your health. And then there's advocacy in the community. So there's two different types of ways you can advocate. So with the person that maybe not feeling well and then need further advocacy, I want to say just mention that that's a resource in the community, and that organization is run by Dr. Simone Wyant and her husband, which is a very I call them the power couple, which they do a training for the community, those in the community that would like to learn how to best understand and take care of themselves as far as advocacy and navigating the healthcare system pretty much. I also wanted to mention, as far as advocacy, another thing that actually was mentioned when we spoke about showing up and speaking up, just be open and willing to learn. We're all still learning. We're all still learning. We're learning from each other. We're learning how to do things a little bit different, to be a strong, united voice. So we're all learning. Another resource which I will mention as far as advocacy, legislative advocacy and learning, that is Sick Cells, which Sick Cells is a nonprofit organization. CEO is Ashley. Her brother Marcus was also the founder. We know Marcus was succumbed to, and now I think 2 years now, Marcus has went to his transitional home. So his legacy still lives on the work that is being done by Sick Cells, and they collaborate with individuals that just have a passion to learn more, individuals that want to come and collaborate, because we know collaboration is strength. So they teach about legislative advocacy and keeping you updated pretty much on what's going on in the sickle cell space, in the legislative space, I want to say. And they have an annual, they do an annual sickle cell legislative day. So that is something that's doing with collaboration with the National Sickle Cell Association. So we do have groups, right, that's collaborating together, that we all could be a strong voice. We know one person can't do it together. So I would tell that person that just me maybe have a little fear, that's, just come into one of these sessions and even watch and see and be introduced to other warriors. I know one of the things that when I learned that my child had sickle cell, the first thing I'd ask the doctor, so how do I get connected to parents? And when he said there's like no such thing, I was like, what do you mean there's no such thing? I mean, like I was like, well, other warriors, how do I get in touch with them? And then when I learned that this was a gap, there was a gap in the community, I decided that I'm gonna get out of my fear and create that support group. I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, wrote a letter to the hospital and told them I need a room. I had some objectives. I just put things in order. And when they said yes, I was like, the hospital said yes, they're giving me a room for a support group. Yes. Because all you have to do is ask and show up. And then even if you have fear, just get down your guard to know that the rest will be history once you come with just a supportive network will be built off of that. So I definitely will share that was helpful to me. And do we have any more questions, Dominique?
We have one more question.
Okay.
Is there a siblings advocacy group? Someone's asking for their sisters.
Okay, there is no siblings, particularly advocacy group, but siblings are getting involved in the advocacy space. So when we think about caregivers are also having to do with our siblings, of course. I can definitely say that my son's caregivers, I can say his older sisters, there's times when he told me that he didn't want me after he got older and they were old enough. He was like, can they stay overnight? And I was like, huh? That was the first time he asked, I was like, wait a minute. Well, it's me and you, buddy. And I was okay with it. I was like, I thought it was nice that he did ask for his sibling to stay in place. I mean, literally when she turned 18, he asked, can she stay? And that was fine. And he let the sibling stay. One funny thing that I do like to share, not for advocacy, we know that siblings are also different. So I have one, his bestie that will do anything for him, and the other one, he would have to say, could you get up and change give me some more ice? And there's one that's really attentive in our family, and there's one that just like likes to stay just relaxing, but here for support. And he was like, the second time he came, he's like, I don't think she should be coming on, very often. I was like, okay. So, but it is support, right? I'm telling you, she would be the one to write a letter. she would be the one to stay on top of things. So there's not particularly a siblings group, but there are siblings, I want to say siblings as caregivers joining in these networks to join in. And we did speak before about sibling spaces. So I know there's blogs that siblings have come to be creative and making. So there's definitely some sickle cell blogs. Also. What was that?
I think there's a Facebook page for siblings also. Okay.
So yes, get connected. So if we find that, we will definitely post that the siblings Facebook page, because we know that siblings are definitely part of the caregiver support that every patient needs. So Etta mentioned National Policy Day.
That was the day we were talking about for sick cells.
Sick cells. So that's the day that we were talking about.
And those are all the questions we have.
Okay.
Renee Kirby did say some sickle cell warriors don't know their genotype. Warriors need to know themselves. It shows the doctors you are serious about your disease. I actually do not like the word disease. I prefer condition. It's just something about the word disease. And even when you tell people, if you say I have sickle cell disease, like, especially if they don't know about it, their whole body language changed. It's like they jump back like 30 steps from you. So I'm like, I just have sickle cell condition. I just don't like the word disease.
I know I usually say disorder. So I know we have different terms. Sometimes I say disorder. If I'm talking to somebody that's not in the community, it's definitely disorder.
How about just sickle cell?
Yeah, I have
sickle cell.
Because they know that it's a condition. Once you say you got sickle cell, I understand that disease thing. It does sound like it jumps out at you, like I'm going to catch it, and doctors ask you, so when did you get sickle cell? Okay.
Oh, let me tell you what I do. When I get asked that question in the ER, the head of the ER had to tell me a couple of times to stop doing it. So I always say there are no stupid questions, except for that question. If you're a doctor, if you're a medical profession, you learn that sickle cell is hereditary, that it is genetic in high school. Everyone learns that in high school. Now, my thing is, as a doctor, if you come to me, you ask me, how long have I had sickle cell? In order for me to feel better and laugh a little so I don't cry, I come up with crazy reasons of how I could have got it. One day I told the doctor, I was like, my aunt told me to stop kissing white boys, and I didn't. Kissed the wrong white dude and got it. He was like, oh my God, what was he? Wrote it in the chart. I told one doctor, I had tripped and slipped on some gum and it fell in my mouth. 2 weeks later, I tested positive for sickle cell. It's funny, it helps me when I'm in a pain, okay?
But you got to tell them it's not real before they leave, Dominique, because we don't want them spreading ignorance.
Oh no, the doctor, the head of the ER gets on them, because a couple of them wrote it in my chart that was how I got sickle cell. And the doctor was like, why are you writing this in the chart? That's how she told me that's how she got it.
There are many medical schools that don't even touch on sickle cell disease.
Yeah.
And so people don't know sickle cell disease. And I can remember being in nursing school, I think there was a paragraph on sickle cell disease. And so that said the sickle cell disease was not important.
Yeah, even in like biology class, it was a paragraph, but it was still, you learned that it was hereditary. That was genetic.
A biology class. That was not a nursing class, okay? And nurses take care of those people with sickle cell.
And you know, nurses have never asked me that. It's always only been doctors.
You haven't run into the nurses yet then. There are nurses that don't know either.
Yeah, there's a couple.
Yeah.
To them and
triage. Or how long, they will ask you how long have you had it, you know.
Doctors and nurses asking me that still in 2023.
Yeah.
It's a crazy question. So
the other thing that you guys need to do when we're talking about legislators and stuff, go into the medical schools. Go into the medical schools and encourage them to utilize you when they do their hematology sessions to share about sickle cell. We actually go into our school at USC and we do the education with the medical students. I actually bring in a couple, you know, a woman who has sickle cell disease and her husband, because I need them to know it impacts the whole family, the whole community. So we're involved in that, and now we're involved in helping them develop a new curriculum for how they're going to teach it. So get your voice heard.
I'm gonna do that.
Thank you, Pat. Yes, we were doing it here, going out into the medical school and nursing school. So COVID kind of changed things, but
so you got to go into the medical. You got to go into the medical school. You know, they're really important. I got to show you guys something you're gonna laugh about. Look I'm visiting my aunt, and you got to see this. Look what you gave me to drink.
It's amazing.
Oh my goodness, the canning jars. I was raised on those canning jars.
And it's full of water, and when it goes down, she refills it.
Oh.
I think she thinks I have sickle cell.
You're sickle cell adjacent.
Yes.
Thank
you. Thank you, Pat. Well, we had a great conversation, and this was a great discussion. Continue the great advocacy work in the community and encourage others, and continue to bring that awareness and educate. You know, we're all in this together, and we're still learning, as well as we're a collaborative voice together. So we're stronger together. So continue the great work that you all are doing and continue to learn. Tomorrow's sessions will include 2 panels, and they're going to be great. We also have individual sessions. We have reproductive health that we'll be learning about too, in sickle cell. So definitely you want to come out to definitely get involved and connect and be on this Hoover app in order to have that engagement and learn. So we thank you for joining this session. Dominique, have any last words? And DeMitrious?
Thank you all so much for joining. Don't forget to make sure you are starting conversations inside of the Hoover app to get on the leaderboard. Now, I do want to tell you guys who is on top of the leaderboard so far. So you guys, if you gotta go start making these, get them points. Monica Rockwell is in first place with 23,800 points. And Miss Etta Carter, you are right behind her in second place with 16,400 points. And in third place so far is Allison Morrison with 15,900 points. Now, if you guys want to get on this leaderboard and you want to beat Monica and Etta, you got to go start engaging.
They got to know that's impossible, Dominique, to beat her.
Monica up there. Y'all got to get up there with Monica. Monica ain't playing no games with nobody. So make sure you guys go on, engage, say hi to people. Don't forget, we're also having the photo contest as well. Make sure you're posting your photos and everything. Thank you guys so much for joining.
Yes, we want to see you in action. Anything that's inspiring, go ahead and post those photos. So we'll take those last words from DeMitrious.
Have a good Friday, hydrate, get some rest, and we'll see y'all tomorrow.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining, and we definitely want to mention our sponsors, Pfizer and Aetna's Medicine. We thank Aetna's. I just want to thank them very, very much for their support. And we continue tomorrow, so we'll be back again. Visit those virtual booths.
And the way to get to the virtual booth, in case you guys don't know, because you still have a little time before 4 o'clock, you're going to go inside of the Hoover app. You're going to click home, and then you're going to click exhibitors. So click exhibitors, and then you just go and enter whichever booth you want. We have several. We have Andrews Counseling, Arnold Palmer Hospital, Editas Medicine, Essence of Life Health, Healing Blends, Kids Conquering Sickle Cell, Pfizer, Sickle Cell Medical Advisory, and Southeast Mel, General Urology. So make sure you guys go visit those booths as well. Visiting the booths also get you points onto the leaderboard. So make sure you visit the booths as well.
Hey, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a great day.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.